Hello, audience. You are listening to the American Armchair Revolution podcast. I am your host, Mark Poland, and may I be the first to welcome you to the revolution. This podcast will cover all sorts of topics ranging from politics, religion, supernatural, relationships, really anything I think is interesting, and hopefully you find interesting as well. Our conversations will range from serious to silly, and regardless of how serious or dark an episode gets, I like to end each episode with a little comedy. Well, let me tell you about myself. I've been a high school teacher for 18 years, 10 of those years as a drama teacher and 8 as a history teacher. And for those of you out there thinking when I talk about my politics, I'm trying to indoctrinate your children, I have 2 things to say about that. 1, I leave my politics out of the classroom. And 2, I can't get your teenagers to read a standard clock on the wall, the big hand and little hand. So I'm not so sure I want them on my side. For today's topic, drum roll, how do all the other parts of the world known as not America feel about America? And today's guest is a longtime friend, Travis Ratz. Travis has been living overseas for over a decade, teaching American Army brats all over the world, English and drama. Welcome to the revolution, Travis.
I'm proud to be part of the revolution, Mark, and I'm proud to be part of your first episode here. I'm already gonna derail your podcast in the first minute here. Mark and I worked together as teachers for many years and as creative partners. In fact, my favorite creative partner of all time, and one of the things that I miss most about living overseas. But one of our first projects together was called The Armchair Philosopher, which is a play that Mark wrote. So, Mark, I'm going to flip the script here, and I'm going to ask you the first question. What's the deal with armchairs? What's the fascination with armchairs? Is this just like a branding thing, or do you feel like, is this your spirit animal?
Maybe I just really like J.D. Vance.
That's what it sounds like. It sounds like a love affair.
I don't know, armchair philosopher, I'm just a guy who likes to, talk about my opinion, and that's why I'm doing this. I have a lot to say, and thank you, Travis. I miss having you here. We've always been really good at throwing creative ideas off each other, and yeah, I'm glad. Thank you for coming on today. So, Travis, tell me a little bit more about what you do and how long you've been doing it.
Yeah, so I'm a teacher like you, Mark, obviously, and primarily an English teacher, but I've been known to dabble in the dramatic arts and do a shakedown circle or two in my time. And I've been doing that for the last 10 years in at a American school system overseas. So basically, if you were in the military and you were stationed overseas, well, the expectation isn't that your kids are going to go to a Japanese school, right? It'll be very tough for American kids, or a German school, or an Italian school, or a Spanish school. So one of the services that they provide is that they'll bring over American teachers, and they'll use American curriculum and American standards, whatever the hot standards of the decade are at the moment, and they will use them to instruct the kids of service members overseas.
Well, that's great. So what are some of the places you've been teaching at over the last 10 years?
Well, actually, both my parents were in the same system. This reminded me of a line, but both my parents are dead. No, both my parents were teachers, and my sister is also doing the same thing. So I grew up overseas in the Philippines. That's where I was born and lived for 7 years before moving to Japan for high school. Then I went to Arizona State University. I know that's a very probably contentious university to bring up on this podcast in particular, as I'm staring across the lumberjack. And he's going to be very upset when he realizes I just got accepted into a film master's program at ASU that I'm doing right now.
Wow.
So it's going to be even more. I'm going to have to get the Sun Devil gear. But after that, I lived in Arizona, and then joining up with my current system, I moved back to Japan, lived by Hiroshima, then over by Tokyo, then moved to Guam, and I've been living in Germany the last 4 years, teaching a little bit west of Frankfurt.
Okay. So you've been all over the place. What's your favorite place, Travis, that you've lived?
That I've lived? I gotta tell you.
I mean, just overseas teaching and all that.
For me, even though it was only a year, I really liked Guam.
Yeah.
Guam is like a 15 by 30 mile island. I know it's not the most, it's weird because it's super exotic in some ways because it's this tiny island out in the middle of the nowhere. But in other ways, it's less exotic because it is an American territory, which is really weird. And the Chamorro people who are like the locals there, like they're American, but they're so not American. Having lived
Yeah.
in the Philippines, that feels like, oh, this is Filipino culture, but also a little bit of like Samoan or Pacific Islander culture. But then, there's fast food everywhere and like
Yeah.
so much of it feels American. So it was just this kind of weird nexus of it. It still has the world's biggest and maybe only Kmart next to it. So I live right next to a Kmart, which is super fun to go into because you're like, this is a Kmart. So that was probably the one that I thought was, I'm gonna use a word that's gonna sound corny, but I found Guam to be very enchanting. Like there's just something
Yeah.
about it being so small in such a mix of cultures that you very quickly feel like it's your home because there's not a lot to explore. I don't know if you know.
Yeah.
Do you ever have this sense, Mark? Like, how long does it take you when you move to a new place to feel like it's your home?
Ooh, probably 6 months
That's quick.
before. Yeah. Well, Travis, you have always been like moving all over the place.
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
been living in Arizona my entire life. So
that's
like
true.
that's from like me moving from Mesa to Scottsdale. It
Yeah,
takes
well,
me 6 months.
yeah. Well, I think that's the thing is like when you move to a place that you haven't been at first, it's like a widening sphere, like a gyre, right? That like
Mhm.
it's just like you're around your apartment or like your temporary hotel. And then one of the things I love to do is like do jogs and you pick a different direction each day. And then you go in
Yeah.
that direction, a couple miles that way, then a couple miles that way. Then like your circle gets wider. And then you get brave and you're like, I'm gonna get in the car and I'm gonna go to the town that's north. And then it widens a little bit more. And just the more you kind of drive in a direction, it's kind of like uncharted territory becomes charted territory. And after a couple
Yeah.
of years, you feel like, oh, I've been there. My litmus test is like, if someone's like, hey, will you meet me here? If I know where to park, it feels like home. I'm like, oh yeah, I can park here. If someone's like, hey, we should go get dinner here, I'm like, where am I going to park? I don't know that area. This does not feel like home to me.
So how long was it before you hit the ocean and decided to go diving down to the bottom of it?
That took about 3 months.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
The
So Mark's
you
referring
are
to, yeah,
he is certified at the deepest levels of scuba diving,
yeah,
which
yeah. I
for
got my
me
master's.
sounds
Yeah,
terrifying.
yeah. I got my master's diver certification while in Guam because in Guam it's just there's always an ocean and it's
Yeah.
very easy to get snorkel gear. It's one of the cheapest places to get certification and to take these courses because there's lots of competition. There's like a scuba shop everywhere and there's scuba instructors everywhere. Everyone's certified. And unlike mini classes where you have to get out on a boat, pay for the boat, go out in the for like an hour or something like that, and then do 2 dives, you can just do shore dives, which means you put the tanks on your back, you get your scuba
Yeah.
partner, you just walk out in the ocean, and all of a sudden you're surrounded by beautiful coral and all these fish. Even places where you have a shore, you don't have those kind of reefs where it's worth doing that, but
Yeah.
you can just walk into the ocean with a tank on your back and feel like you have boated out 3 hours somewhere in the Caribbean to go to like this very niche spot on there. And I'm like you, I was worried of a couple of things. One, like ear problems. Like as kids, I
Oh.
have like the worst hearing. I always feel like my balance is bad. I'm like, once I get underwater, I'm gonna have a hard time decompressing my
Yeah.
ears. But once you go over the feeling, it's pretty. I don't know. I enjoy it, but I can see how people would freak out.
I'm totally claustrophobic, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the thought of being down that deep and like I don't know, it's just terrifying to me.
Yeah, or especially when your scuba partner is like they're looking at the air and they're running low on air, or something's happening and you have to solve a situation, or someone's weights get too heavy and they're sinking rapidly, and you're like,
Oh
"Oh
my
boy,
god.
oh crap, I
You're
gotta,
giving me
I could do
anxiety
something."
just talking about this. So
Yeah, so I would say
Travis,
Guam is probably my favorite. Yeah.
Guam is your favorite? Well, Travis, I'm really curious that, you've lived outside of the United States for the last 10 years, and I feel like a lot of things have changed in the last 10 years. And I feel like I just really want to know, like, the people that you interact that are not Americans, right? Like, how do they treat you? Like, have they reacted to you being American? Like, how do they react to you 10 years ago being American? How do they react to you now? Has it changed? Is it the same? Does it depend on the place?
Yeah, I think that last one I could talk about like a couple of different places and kind of just how I feel like I was accepted in certain situations and not accepted in others. And then we'll talk a little bit about just like in general, like I think how it's changed traveling so much in my life. So we start with Japan. It was a really interesting place. I lived there for like over 20 years in my life. And I specifically want to just more talk about the adult years, past my teen years when I went back there, just because you just have a more awareness for what, you know, people think of you. And I think people treat kids differently
Oh,
than they
absolutely.
do adults. Like, even if they have something against an American or have something against certain nationality, if they see that they're teenagers or kids, they're probably going to be a little bit more softened by it. But Japan is really interesting because it's such a traditional culture and it's such a culture of respect that if something does come out where you could tell that they don't want you around or they don't want you in an establishment, it's always kind of super passive aggressive. In the sense, here's something they'll do in Japan. I know it's not a video podcast, but you'll very rarely hear, or at least I've very rarely heard a Japanese person say no with something. What they will do is they will kind of just scratch their head and they'll make a sound like this. And it's just like, because it's like, would be like rude to say no, to deny someone, to be like, no, like you can't, right? Which is always kind of fun because it's a situation where you're like, you already don't want to be there. Like you're doing bureaucratic stuff, like trying to get something paid on there. You're like, no, this is where I'm supposed to be. And like, you're going to take this check. And I'm like, you can scratch your head all you want. I've been to 5 places today. And of course, the language barrier. I spoke a little bit of Japanese when I was there, but not enough to navigate a lot of situations. Or there will be places in Japan where it's just no entry for foreigners. There are parts in aspects of Japanese society that are a little bit hesitant to have foreigners see, or they've had bad experiences with foreigners in certain establishments, maybe in Tokyo or maybe more in the rural areas. So what you'll try to come in there and they'll just put their hands and an X across their chest and just be like, no, like you can't come in, no entry. You know.
The first time that happened to you, how did you react? Like,
Well, being a teenager in Japan, we tried to get into a lot of places that we probably shouldn't have
of
been going
course.
into. So I very quickly became aware of the X right on there, and then
Yeah.
being a jerky teenager, like, what do you mean we can't come in there? We want tattoos. We're 13. Let us in. As an adult, in certain places, like when I was living in Hiroshima, which is in a more rural part of Japan. And obviously, it has the history with the bomb, and you can go see the peacetime museum there, which is a real emotional thing to see, and the Crane Garden there, and the Peace Bridge, and the dome that the atomic bomb exploded above. They still have some structures that they left with the ruins on there. In there, you'll see there's a little more heaviness. Those places, like as a foreigner, sometimes there are cab drivers that won't pick you up. If they see that you're American. Now, some of that might just be
Yeah.
because, like, they don't speak English, they're intimidated by it, they don't want to converse with the language. So I'm not saying it's all political or it's all emotional based on there. But I remember one time hanging out in Hiroshima with my black friend Alan, and we were not be able to get a cab, and I was livid. We had like 5 cabs go by, no one else, and I'm like, this is bullshit, man. This is
Yeah.
complete bullshit. We can't get a cab. And he looks at me and goes, yeah, is it? And I was like, oh, right.
Right.
Like, right. I'm going to take that privilege. I'm going to check that. I'm going to put that in my pocket, and
You got to check that privilege.
yeah. But I remember seeing that. And then you get to someplace like, take for example, Germany, where it's a little bit tougher to see if you have an encounter with someone and it's not a smooth encounter, if that is based on the fact that you're American or the fact that they're German, in the sense of just like cultural, it's not a small talk culture. There's
Yeah,
not a lot of pleasantries involved. And so it's like, let's get right to the point. What are you here for? Tell me. It's like,
that's interesting.
and yeah, you don't go into a store
Is
and
it
even if
is
you're trying
it
to practice your, yeah.
would you compare it to like New York City? They're not into small talk. They're like, and they're kind of rude. Is Germany like that?
Yeah, I would say that Germans definitely have more in common, in my opinion, with East Coasters in the United States than West Coasters, right?
Yeah.
They love a good rule, and they will let you know when you break it, even if it's a small one, like a jaywalking or like that's the wrong line, but not so self-reflective when they're breaking the rules. I used to tell people my first 2 years here, I would be like, every time I go out, I would get yelled at for doing like, I didn't know what I was doing. I'd be standing in some spot and someone would like very sternly yell at me. And I'm like looking around like there's other people standing here, but they'll be like, no, not them, you. Like, yeah,
Do you
I
think
always
that's
felt
because
like,
you're American?
I don't know. I mean, certainly we dress differently. Americans dress, it's pretty easy to spot an American when they're traveling for the
Yeah.
most part, right? Europeans don't wear a lot of baseball caps, right? They don't wear a lot of shorts. You don't see a lot of shorts in Germany, right? Those are,
And
you see them, but
by
they're
the
on,
way, audience, I want you to know Travis has the shortest shorts
I do.
ever.
Yeah, and I haven't got to
For
wear them in Germany.
years,
You know
I've
why?
been making.
It's so good.
Well, good. I think that's good for you, Travis, because his shorts. I was like, Travis, what are you doing, man? He loves
That's why I
the
like Guam so much.
1980s shorts.
They were short. They were short. Now that I'm approaching 42, I don't know if I can pull off shorts that short anymore. But for a while there, I was like, I'm
Travis,
bringing
you
them
never
back.
could.
I'm bringing them back.
you fight the fight.
And then what happened? Society started wearing short shorts, and I said, you know what? I've carried this as far as I can. I'm going to take a step back. And it's like, even though I can't see the promised land, I was there in promising my thighs.
Yeah, you set the trend, Travis, years before it ever
Yes,
became
thank
a
you.
thing.
I'm glad we could put this down officially on a podcast on there. So yeah,
Travis,
in like Germany, the small talk thing that Americans do, the pleasantries that we have is something that is less tolerated in certain countries. And the whole like, you're at a store in the United States and you're checking out and the cashier has, I don't know, interesting nail polish or a cool tie on. You're like, that's a cool tie. Like my nephew's really into SpongeBob, right? That ain't going to fly here.
No.
No.
What would they say if you said that? They would just stare at you?
If you're just not completely ignored. And I don't speak Deutsch, so they probably just pretend like they just did not understand what you're going to say to avoid it on here. Or
even
maybe
even if they did understand you, they would just pretend they didn't.
There is something like known like by foreigners, the German stare, where they love to just stare at you. They love to stare at people. So you'll be walking and someone will be across the street and they're looking at you. Like in any other place, you would be very suspect. Like, why is this person like staring at me? They're staring at me like they know me or I'm doing something wrong. And then it's just like, no. It's just kind of like, it's just
Germans just creepily stare at people.
Yeah. But what I always find cool about other countries is even though they're not all divided up in the states, a lot of them like we have like provinces or things like that, is they differ wildly between them. Like Eastern Germans, they have these habits, and Southeastern Germans, everyone has their.
I mean, the Cold War, I imagine.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, the country was divided for decades, so it makes sense.
Yeah, or how
have you been to East Germany? Where in Germany do you live now? I should ask that.
I live in basically what is pretty much southwest Germany. So I'm about a 45-minute drive from France. Here. You can take the train and you could be in Paris in 2 hours. Direct train on there. Yeah, I've been to Munich. I've been to the Bavaria region. A couple years ago, I drove through to Poland. So you saw that. I have not been to Berlin, which is someplace that I really want to go. But that's still about, like an 8-hour drive and things like that. So I've been around, not to all the places, and I still don't feel like an expert in Germany or feel like if someone's like, you live in Germany, tell me what it's all about. I'm like, I can tell you what my area is like and my experience is like, but when people are like, they want to talk about which castle is your favorite? I'm like, the one with the moat, you know, the one that looks like the Disney castle, that the Neinschberg one on there. So yeah,
So
I mean, yeah.
like, do you feel like, I mean, do you feel like living in Germany, do you like feel like American? Do you feel like your world view of who you are? I think Americans get like self-absorbed. They're like, oh, yeah, we're Americans. I think people that travel around the world have a different view of like humanity. Would you agree with that? Or what are your thoughts?
Yeah.
How has traveling like opened up your mind about people?
Yeah, I think I can answer it this way for me because I was born overseas and spent,
It's always been that
being
way.
an American on there. It's always been over here. For me, the real trip was going at 18 and living in America for about, 12 years, maybe a little more than that, like 13 years. That was a real trip for me. And what I found to be even more towards your question is then when I then left America after living there 13 years um, in Arizona and then going overseas, I really felt much more the Americanness in me felt more present. Meaning I
Okay.
was thinking I had a better I wanted to explore more of the aspects of what it meant to be an American to me. In particular, when I moved to Japan, I started writing a bunch of short stories that all dealt with like American masculinity at the time. It was,
Yeah.
the teens and it was, toxic masculinity and masculine culture. And I really kind of want to take a look at those types of men that I would go see in the summer, like in Indiana and Iowa when I was visiting my grandparents, and then in the West, like in Arizona, right? The cowboy culture. And
Yeah.
so it was really kind of fun. And I don't know, I felt more endeared to American culture having lived there and then leaving it again. Where it
Yeah.
was the sense where I was able to look at it, and I can't speak for everyone, but sometimes I think when you're an American living in America, especially during like turbulent political times, that it can be very easy to fall into the sense of just like feeling the worst about
Yeah.
a culture or a country. You're just like, I don't like where I'm at right now, right?
Yeah.
So when you kind of leave and you're not immersed daily in that political language or in those cultural aspects to it, it's kind of like being able to look at something from a distance, right? And be
Yeah.
able to like think about it almost like a different place, a far off place, more like a writer
Yeah.
would, right? It's a real place, but it's also not real to you more. It's like a fantasy place. It's like writing about a trip you've been on. Or
You can distance
yeah.
yourself from it.
Yeah.
I do have a question for you, Travis. How do
Yeah.
you get your news?
Yeah, lately that's been changing a lot, and it's really been through this since the last election cycle coming back into it, when it was really heating up, in the fall of 2025, coming back from that summer
Hmm.
after, the nominees were selected and we had the old switch 'em up there at the end there. I was
Yeah.
just like, this is like you got your popcorn, you're just like,
Yeah.
and where I wasn't watching the basic news clips like, an ABC or a New York Times, it wasn't coming fast enough, and it was all feeling very repetitive to me that I needed more, so that's when I started turning to, like, different podcasts,
Okay.
like a Pod Save America, and then that gets you on to some of these other guys that are on there. But then the problem with that is your algorithm kicks in and it's just like this.
And
So then it's like I gotta
yeah.
throw some of the opposite side in there so I can try to balance out the algorithm
Oh
on
yeah.
like
When I
Bulwark and stuff like that. Those commentators were just now they're just very familiar faces.
yeah. No, like when I consume news, I love news, but I have to fight the algorithms on my phone
Yeah.
because they always send me the same things that I agree with. So I always flip over to the other side and I have to search for it, because I like to hear both sides of the same story because I don't want to be fed, what I believe. And I think that's a problem in America is everyone just constantly echo chamber. You're fed what you already believe and it leads to you being closed-minded.
Yeah. What's nice about the podcast world and like the YouTube videos world is you're kind of searching for someone you trust and not whose opinions. Like, it's more important for me to find someone who I feel like is being genuine and their rhetoric is at least coming from a place that doesn't feel manipulative. Like, they're just
Yeah.
well argued or well researched or well spoken and authentic, no matter what side they're on. And then I'll bounce around from those people, as opposed to finding someone who is kind of echoing my beliefs or someone who's easy to listen to. You kind of got to go and find and trust your gut and be like, hey, there's something about this guy or this gal that I feel is authentic. I feel like they're coming, no matter what their beliefs are, I feel like they're coming from a place that they believe is right. And, that's the case. And sometimes it is fun to listen to like the pageantry of the person who's all fire and brimstone on either side, where it becomes like, you're like,
Oh,
okay. Yeah.
That's all we get in America, Travis. All
Yeah.
the time. We get it all the time. I do have a question though. I'm curious. How do you compare like politics in Germany or Japan as opposed to like politics in America? Is it the same? Is it different?
Yeah.
Is it
yeah.
less like, I feel like in America right now, we are so divided left and right. And I feel like we're going to extremes on both sides. And both sides like just hate each other so much. That's what it feels like right now.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, like, what is it like? I'm sure there are conservatives and liberals in Germany. Like, have that same divide in like German politics? Or is that like uniquely American?
I don't think it's uniquely American. And again, because I don't speak German and, a limited amount of Germans that I'm close enough to talk to, I think Germany is political in a lot of small ways. Like, for example, going to Wiesbaden this weekend, there's a bus strike. There's just a bus strike this weekend. That happens a lot. Or a train strike. Or Lufthansa is always on strike, where there's like unions that will just shut down. And like powerful unions where it's like, there are no buses running in Wiesbaden. So the traffic is a mess because everyone's taking their cars. You could see it. I go to my local soccer match for 3 years. I've been going to every home game. It's about a 15-minute walk from my stadium. 50,000 fans every weekend in this small town in here. And it's very political. Yeah.
That sounds like a blast, by the way. That sounds fun.
You will always see like the fans are always holding up political signs. And they use a lot of that, what they call choreography. Fans who hold up signs or do certain things, they will use to be political. Like earlier this year, I was in my seat. They speak German throughout the stadiums on there. And I didn't realize, like, usually the game starts and everyone's just like, it's just, wow, bah, bah, bah. Everyone standing, just like loud chanting. And the game is starting and it's just quiet. And I'm like, and I'm not a cheerer. Like, I just like to watch the game. But I was like, this is weird. And so I start that, let's go, boys. Come on, let's do it. Right. And I'm just kind of like, what's going on there? And then about like 8 minutes into the game, everyone just erupts. Like, there's no play. Everyone just erupts to start chanting. I'm like, did I do that? Then I went home and I found in watching the news of the game, I always like to go back and be like, what was going on that I missed?
Yeah.
They're like, oh yeah, there was like an 8-minute silent protest. I'm just like, woo, yeah,
and they're just
let's
clapping.
Go. Yeah, I'm just clapping and stuff like that, which I never do. And the one time I'm like, I can step it up since everyone's kind of gone down. I'm like, no, this is a protest. Or
they're like stupid American.
Last season, they were there was something about a network wanted to like own all the rights to showing the Bundesliga 2 football games. The fans didn't want it for some reason. I think it just took less control. So every game, at some point, a bunch of bouncy balls would just come flying onto the field. And they have to stop. I mean, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of them. And so they had to stop the game and pick up all these bouncy balls. Right. And that was like their protest. They was just like, that is just like, hey, acknowledge me. We're going to stop the game. And like, why is it stopping? You're like, oh, it's stopping because of this thing. You're like, oh, what is that thing?
That's really interesting. I didn't realize that Germany was like a protest culture. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a protest culture, but it just feels like it's a little bit more baked into it where it doesn't seem to be, but no one bats an eye at it. It feels like to me, it might feel like it's baked in because like in the US, people would be like, it would be on the news and people would be talking about it, and like people who are involved in it would be like very like in that silent protest. I feel like it would be silent. People would be like this, and like this or whatever it is, and there's like, no, we're just quiet. No, we're just not going to talk, And then we do have, the big divisiveness is, in Eastern Germany right now, there's a party that has been around for a while. I think it's called the AfD party, the Alternative Germany Party. And it's a very conservative party. It used to be like not even in the top 5 parties, but I think in this last year with the Americans election, it's moved. I think it was 3rd highest party votes on there. And they're very, when JD Vance came to Germany, that's who he was talking about and talking to. And so I think at first that the AfD party was really thinking about kind of like, oh, can we gain some international allies in our kind of more conservative nature, especially when it came to immigration? AfD is very much like, no, like Germany for Germans, like in the sense of like we have too many people of this and this. In fact, there was just a ruling.
So they're definitely anti-immigration, things like that.
Yeah, so there was just a ruling by I don't know what we'll just call them courts for better words here, where they tried to get the AfD party labeled as like a hate organization on there because they wanted to ban things like wearing religious Muslim garments in public or a public call to prayers and things like that. So that was overturned so the court said no. As of right now, I mean, we'll still be ongoing, but as of right now, we don't identify them because that is not all they stand for. That is just one of their policies that they are shopping around and one of the things that they're pushing for, but it does not encompass who they are as an organization entirely. So that is being pushed on there. So that is a lot of that party's popularity comes out of that Eastern Germany, right? Which was formerly, the Soviet bloc.
So they're more conservative in Eastern Germany.
Yeah. Yeah, but you have AfD tents. You have AfD tents. They'll set them up downtown. They'll, pass out flyers, and it's they're not, sacrificing cows or anything like that. In fact, I probably walked by them 100 times just thinking, is this like the electric company talking about something? I'm like, oh, what does AfD stand for? And then they explained it, and I was like, oh, I can see how that's a really divisive party in Germany right now.
So what about the left? I'm curious, how, like, socialism in America is like a dirty word. Like in Germany and in Europe, there are like socialist parties, right? And is the view of the left different in Germany than the way Americans view, like, a Democrat as a socialist or a communist?
Yeah. I don't know if I could speak to that. I don't know if I have enough insight, but I can give you a couple of things that are maybe more liberal policies or maybe give a sense of it. In the last 2 years, Germany has been playing around with the legalization of marijuana, right? Well, they've decriminalized it. And in certain prefectures, certain areas, regions of Germany, you can grow it. You can grow so much of it and have it on you. You can consume it. Other places in Germany, they're trying out where it's like, we're going to have shops. And if you're a citizen, you can go in, like in Arizona, you can go into the, the dispensary and buy it on there. And that was something I think for a long time that I think that was probably being talked about since, the same amount of time it has been in the States, but it felt like it didn't get a lot of traction until a couple of years ago. And things just move a little bit slower in Germany, right? There's just a lot more. It takes longer for things to happen. It's a more slower progression. And on a more community level, there are, I don't know, I wouldn't define them as socialist principles, but certainly more progressive in the sense of they just got rid of this ban. And I just found this out that if you give someone the finger in Germany, that's considered like hate speech, and you could be fined.
Really?
Up to like 2,000, 5,000 euros, depending on the situation, especially if it's a situation that results in an altercation, or, like in traffic, if someone's beeping at you, you stick your hand out.
I would be fined quite a lot of times in my life.
Yeah.
Driving.
Yeah. Well, I had just heard that a couple weeks ago, and I kind of looked at it and I was like, oh yeah, that is the thing, and talk to people about it. And then I was at the football game and I was like, last match we were losing, everyone was giving the finger to like the fans. I go, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm like, 5,000 euro, 5,000 euro, 5,000 euro, 5,000 euro. And then I talked to someone, I said, but then I saw at the game, like, oh yeah, I think they've just pulled that back. I don't think it stopped people from giving the finger to away fans at football
I don't think
games
any
ever,
fine could
but
stop that.
yeah.
Well, Travis, I have a couple more questions for you, if you don't mind. I'm very curious of how people view Trump in Germany.
Yeah, I haven't had a lot of deep conversations about Trump. I have my landlord lives below me. He's an architect. His name's Holgar.
That's an awesome
big
name.
German guy. Yeah, and so his business is the first 2 floors, and I live in the 3rd floor. So when he's coming in for work, sometimes I'll run into him, and he wants to ask me about like politics a lot. Like, what do Americans think about this? And I was like, Holgar, I don't feel comfortable speaking for all Americans. I hardly feel comfortable speaking for myself, Holgar. But it was very nice of him to be, even in his approach, he was like, hey, like in the sense of like, hey, what do you think about this? He didn't make any assumptions about one way or the other on there. So you're kind of left to be like, okay, I'm going to say a statement and then we're going to see how you respond to it. So anyways, we were talking more about from the architect wise, like what he does specialize in is buying old buildings that are like historic German buildings and remodeling them, but keeping a lot of the original architecture in line with it. I would ask him, I'd say, hey, he's got this building next to mine, this empty building. And he's talking about like fixing it up into apartments. And I say, hey, when are you going to do it? He goes, well, with the inflation in the United States right now, like he goes, I can't take, because the inflation in the United States directly affects the German economy. Yeah. So I say that in the sense of, I can't speak to like necessarily the public opinions of Trump Germany. I'll do have a couple other anecdotes, but the politics of the United States under the Trump administration very much do affect Europe a lot, whether it be Greenland or whether it just be just the U.S. economy that fluctuates due to tariffs. That very much affects the average middle-class German who lives below me ability to expand their business or invest in property to do the things they want to do.
Yeah, the world economy is definitely connected ever since the Industrial Revolution. Like, really, it's not one economy. And what I always find it, interesting and sort of funny that people in America always think that, well, it's just America. Like, no, all the economies are connected. So if something happens here, it happens there. If it happens there, it happens here. And I don't think Americans really grasp the concept that the economies are connected. And,
right.
And thank you for sharing that example. That's a prime example of how it is connected. What happens here affects over there.
Yeah. And then more on like the pageantry side of it, like they have like what's like a Fasching festival. I think it's like associated with Christianity or Catholicism, Fasching. If anyone's religious, they probably know. It's basically like religious Halloween. It's like Carnival. Basically, it's like Carnival, right?
Cool.
So they do parades like in a German way. So it's just like probably like, it's also winter time here. So it's a lot less skin, no beads. Shia LaBeouf isn't around punching people out, but they do have like little parades and they throw candy and stuff like that. And this year in one of the big Fasching parades, they had a lot of Trump floats that were very satirical of Trump. And
what were they?
Let's see. Let me see. You guys Google them here. Fasching.
I think I briefly saw a picture of this on the news. I think there was one where like Trump was like,
ones you got elephant.
Yeah.
You see the elephant one. There's one.
I saw the Statue of Liberty.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, describe the Statue of Liberty one. What is that?
So there's a couple of Statue of Liberty ones. One has the Statue of Liberty with the big smile on her face, says "America resists," and then instead of a torch, she's got decapitated Trump head in her right hand. Another one is much more risque, where it's the Statue of Liberty is bent over and Trump is red face behind, really giving it to the Statue of Liberty. Another one is like a Ukraine soldier and Trump has like a spear going through them. One has
It
Trump
doesn't.
punching out Jesus with the Jesus has a love and humanity shirt on there. And also, I'm just looking at these on here. So I do I don't know, maybe some of these are AI at this point, but a lot of them look like, from what I saw in the news articles, the
Yeah.
similar ones on there. So
So
there's
it,
that.
it
And then,
doesn't seem
yeah.
like Trump is very well liked then in Germany.
And then we had, speaking of football, because I think what I'm finding about football and politics in Europe is that they're kind of one and the same in similar ways. Is that there is we have Bundesliga is like either the main league on there. It'd be like their NFL, right? The number one league. And they have a team not doing very well, but usually the German teams or some German teams will go in the States and they'll do friendlies with MLS teams, like in the
Okay.
summertime when everyone's off. Like Kaiserslautern here, I think, went to St. Louis a couple summers ago and played with them. Was it Brennan? There's a Bundesliga one team who just recently last week announced that they will not be touring the United States. That's the headline,
Wow.
because of
Okay.
they disagree with the ICE policies.
Yeah.
Now, when you read the article, when you read into it, it's like, yeah, that's what they said. But they're also like about to get relegated to the next league, and funding is also an issue. So it's like, yeah, they don't agree with ICE, and then it's like buried in there too. It's like also like they're about to get relegated. They don't have very many funds, and I was like, okay, is this one of those things where it's like, hey,
Get attention.
we can't afford to go. What's a better excuse than we're sucking right
protesting.
now? So I don't know, but that was kind of, again, something with news where you're always like, the headline is like, oh man, German teams are taking a stand. Reading the article, not the first graph, not the third graph, but the 10th graph is also, by the way, their funds are running low as they're on here. So
Travis,
yeah,
I have a couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
How is it teaching Army brats as compared to teaching in the United States?
Well, Mark, we don't like to be referred to as Army brats. Brat summer is done with. We're taking it back. We were there now. A couple of things. One, I feel very home with them because those are the people that I went to school with growing up. So in some ways, it's really nice kind of teaching kids who are in similar situations to when you were growing up. Especially
Absolutely.
kids who live their whole lives overseas and they only have, a distant perspective of America, often cultivated through pop culture or short visits to visit the family. Those are the ones I really like because it's just like, what do you think about? I thought America was Dazed and Confused and Mallrats. And I was like, we can go to the mall. And that's kind of cool. The other thing that's a little bit different is because, everyone's military connected, that takes away some of the economical differences that you see in like a public high school in like a metropolitan area where you would
That's
see
interesting.
like kids who are on free and reduced lunch. And then also kids show up in a Porsche to the same school.
Yeah.
Here, obviously, there are even in the military, there's lots of services that they can provide families who need support, if it comes to it. Because there are still families who maybe one person's in the service and they're a little bit lower rank and they have 6 kids. Obviously, that's going to be stressful and put you in a different economic bracket than the colonel who has 1 kid, on there. But so what you deal less with is the financial discrepancies that can come with that. So the sense of like, you know about this. Does this kid have a place to stay tonight?
Yeah.
Does he have a home to go back to?
Definitely a big portion of the students I teach. I mean, the whole school is free and reduced lunch. Everyone eats for free. It's like a lower economic area. And it's gotten even more dire in the last 10 years of the economic situation of my students has gotten worse over the last 10 years. And a lot more, I don't know, it's really changed the culture of the kids coming in. And I feel like you want to teach these kids, but at the same time, we are providing them a place to go and they're being fed. And like that
Right.
basic principle for a lot of those kids, that's what they have.
Yeah.
And even, and then you try to push them to do more, but I feel grateful that they have a place to go and they have food. And, I'd say about 10% of my students are in that situation.
Yeah. It goes to like that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? First, you have to
Yeah.
be like safe and fed,
Yeah.
and then before anything else
Absolutely.
can happen. So we have that helps to a certain standpoint. But on the other side of it, take for example, when 9/11 happened, I was a senior in Japan on Army base, and it was right
Mhm.
next to a Navy base, so it was a Navy Air Force base where the kids would come, and it was close to an hour away from a big major Navy base. And when 9/11 happened, of course, everyone's like, "What just happened?" But that week, I was at school. Both my parents were teachers, so it didn't affect me. But like the kids were just weird, and you realize everyone's parents are deployed and they couldn't tell them when they were going. So we know this horrible thing has just happened.
Wow.
And these kids, as the world is like, what just happened? Like, what's next? Are we safe? Their parents go. Their parents are deployed to who knows where,
Yeah.
right? To engage in wars in Iraq and stuff like that. This week, there's some news going on. I don't know where you're putting this out, but we're going to have that at school. There's going to be a movement of forces, I'm sure, based on what's on the news. And
Yeah.
some kids, you know, their mom or their dad will be deployed, and they,
Yeah.
in most cases, probably won't know where they're going, and contact will be very limited. And then that kid's going to come to school and they're worried about their parent, and I'm trying to teach them how to use a semicolon, you know?
Yeah.
So that's, financially, there's a little bit less stress in the sense of like, I very rarely worry about like if my students are going to get fed when they go home, but, I worry about like,
About
the,
where their parents are going to be shipped off to.
yeah, and just like how the stress of that and things. So, like
Oh,
anything,
absolutely.
it's got some ups and downs to it.
All right, Travis, I have one last question for you.
Got it.
What is your prediction for America in 10 years from now? Do you have any predictions? What do you think it's going to be like
Wow.
in 10 years?
Wow. I don't know if I have any predictions. I can have maybe some hopes, and I don't even know if hope is the right word, but
So are
like
you optimistic?
preferences. I think I'm gonna go ahead today, this afternoon, talking to you. I feel optimistic. And
Such a cop out.
that's no, that's I think that's the way I think that's the way I kind of have to be is just be like, okay, the opportunities where I can feel optimistic, but don't be afraid to feel pessimistic either. So I guess I know I'm going to go from more of like America and more just like, where are we going to be as humans in like 10 years? What am I hoping for? What I hope for, maybe not predict, is I hope that we really take a look at our use of technology and how we're using it. Like, I would like to find a more analog technological balance. I
Yeah.
think that it's a weird way to interact with people. It's a weird way to share information. It's a weird way to create information. It's a weird way to create art. Like I was talking about this with my students because they were doing their research projects in AP seminar, and some of them are technology, the hot issues with AI, and we were talking about the sense of like, especially with art, as I'm going to pay like 30 grand to get a degree in film, and like in a year from now, you'll just be able to type in a script and it'll make you a Hollywood film that you can
Yeah.
watch. You can put yourself in on there. But
AI is going to change everything. It terrifies me. I'm glad you're
but
optimistic about it.
It's gonna be like but I think about it like this. I think about like when food like changed, and then everyone's just like, oh, everything is just like, it's just like there's no sugar, there's no calories, eat it, whatever it is. And then the backlash was no. You have to put organic on everything. And then for first, like, I'm not paying for that. That's more. But then people are like, yeah, but it's maybe it's better for you, right? And then there's a backlash on that. Is it really organic? I feel like we're gonna have to do that with art. Like, I don't want to consume art in like 5 years that's solely created by AI. I
Yeah.
think we need, like, I need to shop on there. If I have to pay more for a book that was written by a human being, like the way I have to pay for lettuce
There needs
that
to be a
wasn't grown in a
disclaimer that
lab.
says this was written by a real person.
Yeah, and it has to be like verified, and like, there's gonna be a hustle, like, oh, you say you're organic, you're not organic, and then of course there'll be that, There's like this studio who says they're organic, but look at their CGI. Their CGI is not all organic. So if you want to consume that AI bullshit, that's fine, And I think it's gonna be like the health bros, when it comes to it. It's going to be like, no, I only eat organic. I only eat these vitamins. I feel like I'm hoping that there's going to be a healthier balance. We don't go back to the extreme where we're like, refusing to call your mom on the phone because you don't want to touch your phone, But I just hope that we're just a little bit more conscious of what we're doing when we engage with these things. Yeah, of course.
Absolutely.
I love to go eat McDonald's every once in a while. It hits the spot.
But you don't
I
do it
just
every
don't want to
day.
do it every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Travis, for being my first guest, and thank you very much. And now it's everyone's favorite part of the show. Time for Mark's Remarks. Do you remember being a little kid on the playground or PE and that very special moment in an adolescent's life when teams are selected one by one? Now, if you were good or tall or strong, popular, you were fine. You were golden. If you were chosen first or second, you were filled with a sense of pride and accomplishment. In fact, after that, the game didn't even really matter. The real game of life is the order you are selected, and you won. You are probably going to be rich, successful, doctor, lawyer, maybe have a supermodel wife. You are sitting pretty. But if you weren't chosen first or second, your anxiety level starts to rise. It is literally a public acknowledgement that and declaration that the people chosen ahead of you are in fact better than you. I think that is the starting point for a lot of people's mental illness in the world. Oh, you have a mental illness? Let me guess. You were chosen last on the playground. I really think people should do a study on this. There has to be a definite connection. So you're waiting and waiting. Here goes another one and another. A girl? Really? A girl? Jeff, we sit together at lunch. You never ever wanted to be the last kid chosen. That is probably the most humiliating thing that can happen to you because your team you're on doesn't even want you to be on their team. They got stuck with you. And there's always that one asshole kid who's like, oh, not him. I feel like the way America's going right now, we are in serious danger of being chosen last. 20 years ago, we were always chosen first. Hey, who do you want? America, Hollywood, apple pie, democracy. I choose America first. World War II, baby. But now, there's this anxiety growing. People are not choosing us first. It's becoming a little disconcerting. I mean, people are choosing Oman over the U.S. Oman, really? Oman? What, you choose Oman over the U.S.? Come on, I bet he can't even dunk. Now, the United States is standing next to Estonia, making hard eye contact with Norway, sending them mental messages to choose us next. Come on, Norway. We've always been cool. Even Israel passed on us. Come on, Israel. We gave you a nuke. I'm worried after another 3 years with President Cheeto McDonald's pants, we're going to be one of the last ones chosen. We're going to be standing next to Russia, Afghanistan, North Korea, and Burundi. And Norway's going to be like, man, that's a tough choice. I mean, Burundi's GDP went up 3% last year. Nah, I'll take Burundi. They have a higher ceiling. I mean, America's has already peaked. If we are not careful, the only two countries left are going to be the United States and North Korea. Oh man, should I take North Korea or the United States? Oh, that's tough. I mean, they do have free healthcare in North Korea, but they also have death camps. Screw it. I'm going with North Korea. At least their dictator is not in the Epstein files. And that's our show. Thank you, Travis, for being such a wonderful guest. And if you like what you hear, please like us on Facebook, Instagram, and share with your friends. And tell them to join the American Armchair Revolution. Have a nice night.